Welcome to Around the World in 8 days, where I'm making 8 dishes from 8 regions of the world as voted by you. And for North America, the winner was Mexico, so I'm making chilaquiles rojos. Firstly, I cut a bunch of tortillas in triangles and fried them to make them crispy. I then roughly chopped a tomato, an onion, some red jalapeno, dried chilies, and a garlic clove, and roasted everything until charring a little bit before transferring to a blender and blending together with some veggie stock. After filtering the mixture back into the pan, I added oregano, black pepper, and cumin seeds because I forgot to add them in the blending process. And finally, I incorporated and coated the fried tortillas. And because it's just a matter of garnishing, I'm adding queso, avocado, a couple fried eggs, red onion, coriander, and a bit more queso. And even though I have the suspicion the avocado doesn't go with the red version, it was still incredible. Welcome to Around the World in 8 days, where I'm making 8 dishes from 8 regions of the world as voted by you. And for South America, the winner was Brazil, so I'm making moqueca de peixe. To begin with, I cut 3 bell peppers of different colors and an onion and put half of that in a pot with olive oil. And after a couple of minutes, I also added half a tomato, a chili pepper, and some water. I also cut a cod fillet in cubes before layering it on top of the soft veggies, followed by some lime juice, the remaining half of the vegetables, and coconut milk. And for the last layer, I used shrimp and olive oil instead of palm oil, because I couldn't find that anywhere. And while the dish is sometimes served with rice, it's most traditionally served with farofa. So I'm making that by combining butter and olive oil, followed by garlic and Brazilian nuts and cassava flour. And finally adding some salt and herbs and toasting until brown. And after adding the same herbs to the moqueca, it's finally ready to be served. I've made some Brazilian dishes before, but this might be my favorite one so far. Welcome to Around the World in 8 days, where I'm making 8 dishes from 8 regions of the world as voted by you. And for Central America and the Caribbean, the winner was Cuba. So I'm making moros y cristianos. I started by soaking the beans overnight and simmered them in a pot with a couple bay leaves for a couple hours. And while I waited, I peeled and chopped some garlic, onion, and green pepper. After draining the beans and saving the liquid, I added some olive oil to the pot and made a sofrito with the vegetables plus salt, cumin, and oregano. I then washed the rice and added it to the pot as well, stirring for a couple minutes. And finally, I added the bean broth, a dash of vinegar, and a sprinkle of salt. Once the cooking was over, I mixed it with the beans, being careful not to break them. And even though a bit time consuming, this dish is as delicious as it is simple. Welcome to Around Welcome to Around the World in 8 days, where I'm making 8 dishes from 8 regions of the world as voted by you. And for the Middle East and North Africa, the winner was Lebanon, so I'm making tabbouleh. I started by soaking the bulgur in boiling water and moved on to the chopping. The most prominent herb is definitely parsley, but the dish also includes some mint leaves and green onion. And after removing the pulp from a couple tomatoes and chopping those as well, I put everything together into a bowl. The dressing is very simply some good olive oil and the juice of a lemon. And after combining everything together, making sure there's less bulgur than parsley, I only needed to adjust with salt and pepper, and the dish was ready. This may be the most popular salad from the Middle East, but there is definitely a good reason behind that. Welcome to Around the World in 8 days, where I'm making 8 dishes from 8 regions of the world as voted by you. And for Sub-Saharan Africa, the winner was Ethiopia, so I'm making misir. This spicy red lentil stew starts by blending together a white and red onion, some ginger and garlic. After cooking in some neutral oil for about 10 minutes, both color and consistency change. And at that point I added berbere, salt, pepper and tomato paste, covering and cooking for another 10 to 15 minutes. Finally, I washed the red lentils and added them to the pot as well. And after adding a bit of water as necessary, I cooked for another 30 to 40 minutes until the consistency was right. This is usually served on top of injera bread, alongside other salads and stews. But on its own, it's already incredible. Welcome to Around the World in 8 days, where I'm making 8 recipes from 8 regions of the world as voted by you. And for Asia, the winner was Japan, so I'm making onigiri. I started by washing, soaking and cooking some Japanese short grain rice. The filling I chose was a very easy canned tuna, Kewpie mayo and soy sauce. And once the rice was cooked, I transferred it to a tray to let it cool down slightly. Interestingly, the rice isn't seasoned in the cooking process, but when shaping the onigiri, I rubbed some salt on my hands before adding the rice, the filling, and closing it up. And finally, I cut some strips from a nori seaweed sheet and used them to wrap them around the base of the onigiri. And with a little sesame seeds for garnish, these are an incredible snack. Welcome to Around the World in 8 days, where I'm making 8 dishes from 8 regions of the world as voted by you. And for Oceania, the winner was New Zealand, so I'm making pavlova. The choice of dish came from the fact that I couldn't find any native Maori ingredients here in Europe. And because I didn't want to substitute anything, and pavlova seems to be originating from New Zealand, I went with that. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm not describing what I'm doing, as this was a bit of a failure. It was my first time making meringue, and I don't know what I did wrong, but it came out a bit flat and expanded a lot in the oven. And I also left the icing cream out for too long, and it became a bit liquidy. Please let me know if you have any tips, and this is a promise to try out some traditional Maori foods in the near future.